Good evening, everyone. My name is Emmanuel, and this evening I will present a PowerPoint presentation on the importance of black fathers in urban communities. Troubled youth in the inner city lack guidance, and the majority have no father figure in their life. President Reagan coined the terminology war on drugs in the 1980s when America saw a huge rise in drug use. Think about a father figure in your life. Think about how essential they have been in your upbringing. Now imagine your life without that person. This is the reality of many children growing up in the urban communities. Troubled youth in the inner city lack guidance, and most of them are missing father figures. The 1980s was a very fun time for some. The rise of rap music, puffy hair, bright colors. But for African/Latino males, this was a time where the system would divide, damage, and separate them from their families. President Reagan gave life to the terminology war on drugs in one of his famous speeches. The 1980s was a time, and the war on drugs, if you're not familiar, was a time in the 1980s where crack cocaine would come in and spread through urban communities like a wildfire. Which brings us to our next slide, the war on drugs. The war on drugs. So, the war on drugs was the rise in drugs and drug use in the 1980s which damaged families. President Reagan declared the terminology war on drugs. CIA agents imported drugs into urban communities, which were a specific target. So if you're not familiar with the terminology war on drugs, it was a time in the 1980s when crack spread it like a wildfire through the urban communities. CIA agents and several undercover cops imported large loads of narcotics into urban communities. With murder, drug use, overdoses, all skyrocketed. The drug problem became so large, which brings us to our next slide in the terminology, mass incarceration. Now, what is mass incarceration? Mass incarceration, the number of incarcerated males doubled under Reagan's presidency and damaged families. Many African Americans/Latino males were separated from their families. 75% of African American children are born to single mothers. 40% of these families fall below the poverty line. This starts the cyclical nature of the children of the child, which is the school to prison pipeline. Many African Americans/Latino men that were dealing drugs decided that drugs were going to be profitable source of income, were all targets of arrest. Young, naive, and lack of opportunities, and the only way to make money fast, the idea of dealing drugs and making a quick buck leaped out at him. When President Reagan entered the White House, the prison population was 329,000. And when he left the office, the population doubled to 627,000. Now, out of that number, many African men and Latinos were separated from families. According to the article, families of incarcerated African American children are 75% born to a single parent, single mother family. 75%. 40% of these families fall below the poverty line. Many of the children follow rough patterns and end up repeating the same cycle of going to prison and failing to raise their families. Do you see the chain reaction from the father to the son to the next generation? All starting from. So in conclusion, fathers are important in African American communities. 75% of African American children are born to single mothers. Mass incarceration has targeted African/Latino males. Troubled youth in the inner city lack guidance, and most of them are missing fathers and males in their life.